Hi, I'm Mary Shelley, and welcome to me screaming into the void, mostly about books. A book reviewer N5E said that I should talk more about lesser-known post-apocalyptic books. And I immediately thought we need to talk about The Last Man by Mary Shelley. Yes, that Mary Shelley. So, in The Last Man, Leonard Verney is experiencing the end of the world. And with the world, we mean Europe and Turkey, due to a plague. And as a modern reader, we, of course, understand why Verney survives the plague, because he is, among other things, doing basic hygiene stuff. But the reality is that when this book was published, that was quite a novel idea, what she was presenting here. So we understand what he is doing. This is a plague. Most people don't follow what we will say is basic hygiene stuff. So a lot of people are now sick. And he is a stand-in for Mary Shelley, but he is wandering around the world trying to figure out where he now fits in a world that is completely different due to the consequences of this disease. And this book is a tome, and it spans years. And I think that's one of the things that I really enjoyed with the book. It's a post-apocalyptic book that isn't just right now, figuring out things right now, but actually looks at the consequences of what it would mean if we had a pandemic that did devastate. What would the long-time consequences be when it comes to that? Because due to a lot of post-apocalyptic books being very centered around one certain action or in a very short time frame, trying to move from A to B. So Verney is traveling around, and he is very much isolated, and the consequences of that. And I'm going to read a quote from the book, from the very beginning of the book. "I am the native of the sea-surrounded nook, a cloud and shadow land, which, when the surface of the globe, with the shoreless ocean and trackless continents, presents itself to my mind, appears only as an inconsiderable speck in the immense whole. And yet, when balanced in the scale of mental power, far outweighed countries of larger extent and more numerous population. So true it is that man's mind alone was the creator of all that was good or great to man, and the nature herself was only his first minister." So here you can sort of see how Verney understands himself a lot because of the consequences of this post-apocalyptic the thing due to the plague and the consequences of the plague. As someone who is, I am the boss, I live alone, people will listen to me. And then he meets Adrian, and he meets Lord Raymond, and these are people who start opening the mind of Verney into that fact that no man is an island. And the question of is the consequence of the pandemic and epidemic the worst consequence? Has that to do with isolation and the fact that we are social creatures and that we need each other. And this I think is an interesting talking point in regard to what was happening in Mary Shelley's own life at this point. Mary Shelley wrote this book after her husband Percy had died in a shipwreck. And she was devastated. And Mary Shelley and Percy Shelley were very famous for the reaction of what was happening after their death, sort of being mummified with each other's hearts and stuff like that. Google it. It's a ride. So, we absolutely know that, or we interpret that Vernie is Mary Shelley, that is a representation of who she was, how she was described, how she described herself, and the changes that, among other things, Adrian and Raymond did. And therefore, it's not that difficult to also read into the fact that Adrian might be a representation of Percy Shelley. In addition to that, Lord Byron, was also a very good friend to both of them, died 2 years before this book was published, so 2 years after Percy Shelley. And it might be easy to read Lord Byron into Lord Raymond and the way he is described in the book. And therefore, all of these themes within The Last Man of isolation, of the devastating consequences of the lack of interactions, of how that should be our number one priority, how can I deal with the people that I depend on suddenly depending on me, and everything that the social aspect of what a crisis can mean to us as a form of grief. That what Mary Shelley is talking about and trying to deal with in regard to her isolation as Vernie in this post-apocalyptic society due to everyone dying due to a plague is very much Mary Shelley's reaction to both her husband and her close friend dying very recently. That death's worst attribute is isolation and lack of connection more than loss of life, which I think was such a wonderful, different take on a post-apocalyptic society and a post-apocalyptic narrative, where it's not life that is at the center. It's not life that is the life or death. It is human connection. And one of the reasons why I think that The Last Man by Mary Shelley probably should be read more is that, well, we live in a society that has felt an epidemic and pandemic and the consequences of isolation and the lack of connection that has happened since. We have become bad at talking to one another. We don't talk to one another, and we are surprised that we are becoming sick because of it. We're surprised that depression is on the rise when we have lost the number one thing we know helps with depression, which is connection. So, book reviewer N5E. I don't know if I asked or answered your inquiry correctly, but if you want to read a lesser-known post-apocalyptic book that does take you a while, but is absolutely worth the journey, if you're asking me, and not the foolish people who didn't enjoy it when it was first published, I will recommend The Last Man by Mary Shelley. Leave your comments down below, and thank you for listening to me screaming into the void.